You've seen the picture. I mean, everyone's seen it.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the most iconic wildlife photos on the planet.
That Japanese macaque just covered in snow, eyes closed, soaking in a hot spring. It just looks like pure bliss.
It does. It looks perfect, almost too perfect.
Yeah.
But the real story behind that image, how it all started, why they do it, and who actually gets to go in the water.
It's way more complicated.
It's so much more fascinating than just a pretty picture.
And that's what we're diving into today. We're talking about the wild Japanese macaques, the world-famous snow monkeys of Jigokudani Monkey in Nagano. We've gone through the academic papers, the park's history, the scientific studies.
To really get to the bottom of how this completely unique culture started.
And it is unique. That's the starting point, right?
That's the defining truth. This one troop of macaques, they're the only troop of monkeys in the entire world known to do this. To seek out hot springs for warmth. It's a singular cultural phenomenon.
So our mission is to peel back that tourist myth and really understand the science and the history behind the snow monkey.
Zag.
Okay, so let's get into it. The place itself seems like the right place to start. The environment they live in.
It is. The name is Jigokudani.
Which literally translates to Hell Valley.
Yeah, and it really earns that name. It's an incredibly harsh place to live.
How harsh are we talking?
We're talking an elevation of about 850 meters. Snow can be over a meter deep all winter, and temperatures, they regularly drop below -10 Celsius.
Wow.
These monkeys are already outliers, They're the most northern-dwelling primates in the world besides us. So they're built for the cold, but this is extreme.
And that extreme environment got even more complicated for them back in the 1950s.
It did. This is where the human element comes in. You had all this rapid development ski resorts, mostly, which started pushing the monkeys out of their natural habitat.
So they lost their food sources.
Exactly. And a desperate, hungry monkey is going to look for food wherever it can. So they started coming down from the mountains and raiding local farms, apple orchards mainly.
Which I imagine the farmers weren't too happy about.
Not at all. It was a huge problem called saragai, or monkey damage. And it got so bad that there were serious calls for, culling the population.
Wait, culling, as in extermination. That was the first solution.
That was what was on the table, yeah. But the founder of what would become the park, he was completely against that idea. His goal was coexistence, not elimination.
So what did he do?
He came up with a plan to lure them back up the mountain, away from the villages. And that was the start of the baiting program. Around 1961, they started feeding them.
So the whole park, this famous place, it wasn't started to showcase bathing monkeys. It was basically a conflict resolution zone.
Precisely. They fed them near an inn, the Jigokudani Onsen Korakukan, to keep them in one place, high up in the mountains.
And that's where the magic happened.
That is where culture was born, completely by accident.
So the inn had an outdoor bath, an onsen, for its human guests.
It did, and the story goes that around 1962, a young macaque, just a 1-year-old, saw a piece of food, probably an apple from the feeding fall, into that human bath.
And it went in to get it.
It jumped in, grabbed the apple, and in that moment, it must have realized, wow, this is warm. It was this accidental discovery of comfort in the middle of a brutal winter.
One lost apple creates a global icon. That's an amazing story. So did everyone just jump in after that?
No, not at all. It was a slow burn. First, other young monkeys started copying the behavior. They're the most curious.
Right.
And then, and this is the crucial part, the behavior spread maternally. Mothers taught their babies. And that's how it became embedded, a learned local culture passed down through generations.
Okay, but now you have a new problem. Monkeys and humans sharing a bath is not very hygienic.
Yeah, that became an issue pretty quickly. So in 1967, they came up with the solution.
A monkey-only spa.
A dedicated monkey-only outdoor bath built right inside the park. And that's the one we see in all the pictures today.
So the origin was an accident, but the reason the habit stuck around.
Yeah.
That's all about survival.
It's all about hard science. The main reason is to conserve energy and survive that extreme cold. You really only see them bathing a lot from December to March, the coldest months.
And this brings us to that really fascinating 2018 Kyoto University study. They wanted to actually measure the bliss we see on their faces.
They did. It was a groundbreaking study, really. They focused on the adult females in the winter, and they analyzed their fecal samples.
Okay, so what were they looking for?
They were looking for stress hormones, specifically glucocorticoid metabolites.
All right, break that down for us, for someone listening who, isn't a biologist. What is that?
Think of it as the physical evidence of stress. When your body is under pressure, like from severe cold, it releases these hormones. It's your fight or flight response kicking in, burning energy to stay warm. They were literally measuring how stressed out the monkeys were.
And what did they find? When they compared weeks the monkeys bathed to weeks they didn't.
The results were stark, just incredibly clear.
A big difference.
A huge, statistically significant reduction in those stress hormone levels in the weeks they were bathing.
Wow.
So that relaxed, tranquil look on their faces, it's real. It's measurable physiological stress relief.
So it's not just about feeling warm in the moment. It's about reducing the massive energy cost of being cold.
Exactly. When you lower those stress hormones, you conserve energy. And that energy can be used for other things like finding food, a better immune system.
And ultimately, higher reproductive success.
It turns a simple behavior into a critical survival tool.
Okay, but this brings up the question that I think everyone has. We all know that awful feeling of getting out of a hot shower into a cold room. In Japanese, they call it yuzami, right?
That's right, the post-bath chill.
How did these monkeys step out of 40-degree water into a sub-zero snowy landscape and not just freeze?
That is the million-dollar question. And the answer is that they have this incredible three-part physiological system that makes them uniquely adapted for this.
Okay, let's break it down. What's part one?
Sweat glands, or rather, a lack of them. We humans are covered in them, and that evaporation is what chills us so fast. Macaques barely have any, mostly just on the palms of their hands and feet.
So less evaporation, less chilling. Simple.
Very little, yeah. The second part is their fur. It's incredibly dense and oily. It's like a natural wetsuit.
So the water doesn't even get to their skin.
For the most part, no. The inner layer stays pretty dry. They get out, give a big shake, and most of the water just flies right off.
Okay, so oily fur is the second defense. What's the third? The internal one.
This is the real key. It's called peripheral thermal insulation. It's a fancy term for their ability to constrict the capillaries near their skin. The second they hit the cold air, their body restricts blood flow to the surface. It traps all that core body heat deep inside so they don't lose it to the cold air. They are literally built to avoid Alzheimer's.
That is incredible. So the science is clear. But let's go back to that postcard image. That idea of the whole troop just hanging out in the spa together. That's not really the reality, is it?
Not at all. That's the tourist myth. The truth is, they're strategic about it. They only really bathe when it's super cold or actively snowing.
And on a sunny day.
On a warmer, sunny winter day, they'd much rather just sunbathe on a rock. It's easier.
And even when they're bathing, it's not the whole group.
No, not even close. The research shows it's only about a quarter of the troop, maybe 40 out of 160 monkeys who are regular bathers.
And that 25%. It's a very specific demographic.
Overwhelmingly, yes. It is almost entirely females and their children. Juveniles.
A ladies' retreat.
You could absolutely call it that.
So the big question is, where are the guys? Where are the adult males, especially the big alpha male? You'd think he'd want to conserve energy the most.
And yet, he almost never goes in the water. And this is one of the big debates among researchers. There are a few theories.
Okay, what's theory number one?
The readiness theory. His job is to protect the troop, right? He has to be ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. Being soaking wet would slow him down.
So, duty calls.
Yeah.
He can't afford the spa day.
Pretty much. The second theory is a bit more social. It's the dignity and appearance theory.
Dignity.
Yeah. The idea is that high-ranking males don't like getting their fur wet because it mats down and makes them look smaller.
Seriously.
In a world where your size and your perceived strength determine your status, looking smaller, even for a little while, could be a real threat to your position in the hierarchy.
Wow. That's surprisingly relatable.
Yeah.
So they choose to look tough over being comfortable.
That's the theory. But probably the most compelling one goes back to how the habit started.
It's cultural transmission.
Exactly. Most adult males in a troop are immigrants. They weren't born there. They joined the troop later in life.
So they miss the lessons.
They miss that critical window in childhood where they would have learned to bathe from their mothers. It's not part of their culture, so they just don't do it.
Okay, so if it's mostly the females in the water, does their social hierarchy, their rank, still matter in the hot tub?
Oh, absolutely. But it's really complex. The research found that the high-ranking females get to bathe for much longer than the low-ranking ones.
Makes sense. Top rank, best access.
And logically, that means they get the biggest stress relief benefit from the water.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
There's a huge catch. The same study found that even though they got the most spa time, those same high-ranking females had higher overall stress levels than the lower-ranking females.
Wait, hold on. They get the most relief, but there's still the most stress.
Yes, it's the burden of rank.
That sounds like executive stress for monkeys.
It basically is. Being high rank means you're in more fights, you're constantly defending your position, managing the group. The stress of that job is just greater than the relief they can get from the bath.
That's fascinating. But there are moments when the spa seems to change things.
It does. Sometimes the hot spring acts as a kind of social neutralizer. Researchers have seen low-ranking females grooming the alpha female in the water.
Which is something that wouldn't normally happen.
Almost never. It's as if the warmth and the relaxed environment temporarily smooth over those rigid social rules. It creates these rare moments of peace.
You know, we should probably give people a sense of what it's actually like to get there, because this park is still incredibly remote.
It is, and that's by design. To see them, you have to walk this unpaved, often icy trail for about 2 kilometers. It takes a good 30 or 40 minutes.
And that isolation was always the point, right?
Yeah.
To keep the monkeys separated from the villages.
To keep them wild, yeah. It prioritized their well-being over easy tourism. But the world eventually found them anyway.
It started with the cover of Life magazine in 1970, right?
That put them on the map. And then the 1998 Nagano Winter Olympics just created an explosion of international interest.
And now the visitor profile is completely different.
Totally. On a peak winter day, up to 70% of the visitors can be non-Japanese tourists, all trekking up that same icy path.
Which has created a whole new set of problems.
A huge one. The park now talks about facing extreme crowding. The Japanese term they use is shujitsu tomo tahen kanzatsu.
Dreams.
Extremely crowded all day long. It's a real challenge for them. They're trying to figure out how to manage it, maybe with online tickets or daily limits.
It's that classic conservation dilemma, balancing access with preservation.
It is. But it's still an incredible experience because the onsen is only one part of their lives. The real magic is just seeing these wild animals with no cages just living.
Playing in the snow, foraging, doing all their weird monkey things.
Like drinking the sulfurous spring water, which we still don't really know why they do. It's a chance to observe the full, complex life of a wild primate.
So that was our deep dive into the world of the snow monkeys.
Wild ride.
Yeah. We learned this whole global phenomenon, this unique culture. It started with a lost apple and a plan to stop monkeys from raiding farms.
And we found out that the famous bliss on their faces is real, measurable stress relief. It's a key to their survival, and they avoid getting chilled thanks to that amazing 3-part system of no sweat, oily fur, and internal heat trapping.
And finally, we learned the hot tub is basically for the ladies and kids. The tough guys stay out because of duty, dignity, and a bit of a cultural gap.
It all comes back to a learned local culture that gives them a real measurable advantage for survival, just like the famous potato-washing macaques in another part of Japan.
Which leaves us with a final thought to send you off with. We've seen that animal culture can create these completely unexpected survival tricks washing food, taking a hot bath to de-stress. So the question for you is, what other learned non-essential behaviors are happening out there in the wild right now? Maybe just starting with one curious animal that we haven't even noticed yet. And could one of them be the next critical tool for coping with the growing pressures of climate change? Something to chew on.